the name Nocerino. You heard her name also, Michele Nocerino. Last year her father was honored in New York City, and that marked a very special moment. It was like the closure of a certain era and the beginning of a new one. It was also for Michele the beginning of her giving form to her unique approach to the crystal skull Shannara, and also her way to finally bring out her unique abilities. She has a lot of gifts to share, and she is really dedicated to help people on their journey. So it is with great pleasure that I'd like to invite Michele Nocerino as the next speaker.
Hello, everyone. I'd like to initially say welcome, everyone. Thank you all for being here, as this is a very important time right now. These guys are going to set up Shannara, and we may have a short video of my dad. I'd like to speak a little bit about my father, who it was very important, certainly in my life. He's known in the crystal skull world, but he's known also in many other fields. I initially started to present with Shannara because I wanted my father honored. And growing up, my dad and I were very close, but I'm going to tell you the truth, I didn't have anything to do with crystal skulls. And it was always sort of there were many that came through the house and many that I sat with, and little did I know until very recently that a friend of mine told me 30 years ago, well, you're the next one. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. And I have to say that it's been an incredible journey, and the doors that have opened up and the healing and the connections that have been made through Shannara have been amazing. A little bit, and actually I just had a close friend of the family that had a session with Shannara yesterday morning, and he was sitting down saying, I was in a session with your dad, one of the only ones that he did, and he told me about you. And I said, really? And he said, yeah. My daughter isn't into this at all right now, but she's going to be the one that's going to carry this on. So I'm blessed, because if you choose your parents as they say you do, I certainly chose very well. So I'm very grateful for that. I'm also grateful and honored that all of you are here, and all of these other Crystal Skull Guardians and the Crystal Skull family who are very generous and very kind and supportive, and this is an amazing time. Oh, there's my dad and mom. How are we going to run the video? I think so. I have about a 60-minute video of my dad speaking about scrying and the crystals and whatnot, and then I'll try to figure out what I'm going to say to you when I'm done. we were having some technical difficulties earlier, so we'll see if this is going to work. Are we going down? So is everybody having a good time here today? Beautiful energy.
I believe that these skulls, and perhaps all crystal, but particularly these ancient human-sized carved crystal skulls, are computers. How they're loaded with information, I do not know. I do know we are trying desperately to take this information out, perhaps, and we believe we are right for the betterment of you and I and others within the world.
We welcome you to a time of discovery, the world of crystal skulls. Dreams, doorways, dimensions. Your host, Fr. Nick Nocerino, renowned authority in the fields of crystal and crystal skulls, and founder-director of the Crystal Skull Society International.
In order to better understand what we do, we call what we do scrying. Scrying may mean nothing to the modern New Age person, but in my time, scrying meant crystal gazing, and that's what the New Ages call it, crystal gazing. Scrying, though, has a great deal to do with other things besides crystals. Any polished surface was used for scrying. A brass plate, an obsidian rock. For instance, this is an ancient crystal ball. The entire outside surface is left rough, the inside is polished, and it is through this part of the polished section that the prophet or the seer, the scryer as we call them, looks to determine the information they need for the past, the present, or the future. Now, scrying instruments come in all sizes. They come as small as this rubellite tourmaline, or as small as this rutile crystal. And this is a very old scrying tool from South America, an amethyst bar. Here is another scrying tool, a crystal. Carnelian is often and is an ancient tool used in scrying, as is hematite. But mostly we're interested in crystal skulls. This here piece of solid quartz crystal would probably make a skull about this size or a little smaller. This is a replica of the Mayan skull. The Mayan skull is much more different than the quartz crystal that the ancient would have used, and not necessarily quartz crystal, but whatever polished stone he used, over Max that you've seen earlier, in that this one not only is smaller, as you can see, but it is carved different. Look at the templates. This area is used for scrying. This area is very difficult to scry in. Look at the eyes. The optics carved in here are not in here. Yet the eyes in both skulls can be used for scrying. Both skulls, for that matter, nearly all skulls, the eyes would give images. These images may be of things far beyond our comprehension. It is not even sure if we are hallucinating or if the images are somehow imposed within the stone. Let's take Max, for instance. Max gives you a clear vision here. Max gives you a clear vision here across the eyes. And as you work with Max, you get a direct pathway to scry right through the top of the temple, moving over through the right side back of the head. Yet we have a cap in here, which we call a white cap, and we have a white cap here. This means this quartz crystal was taken as close to its matrix as possible. The matrix is the stone that's holding it in place. Whereas in the Mayan skull, the matrix is completely removed. This skull becomes very easy to work with. This skull becomes much more difficult, requires more concentration, more manipulation of the hands, which we call psychometry. Psychometry is the touching of the object or the touching of the energy field of the object and picking up images within the mind or within the object which go into all of the dimensions of your senses. For instance, all of these skulls you see in front of you produce odor. They are clear audio. They produce sound within our minds, within our inner ears. We have feelings. We know things that we did not know we knew before we worked with them. But the most interesting thing of all is that no matter which skull we are working with, we seem to get some idea of perhaps legends. And what are these legends? For instance, we look in here and we see an ocean. We look in here and we see an ocean. We look into this skull, which is a replica also of a Mayan skull, and we see an ocean. We look in here and we see an ocean. Yet this is not a crystal skull. Why should it show the same things? It is hard to determine why they show the same things, but all crystal skulls show three specific things of interest and identity. One is a life form, some civilization, some culture that lives within the water, within the ocean. We see dolphins, we see whales, we see things that don't exist, mermaids, merwogs. We see gigantic reptiles that move along, and no one even can imagine the size of them, but looking into the crystal, they seem to be gigantic. We see them in here, we see them in here, we see them in here. Then another thing happens. We see within the skulls a very interesting thing, and that is people who live inside of what we would say is the earth, caves. Caves within caves with their own daylight, their own sunlight, their own moonlight. But far beyond that, we have another aspect that is perhaps the weirdest of all. There are craft, or what we call craft, that fly into the skulls from one end to the other, fly out of it, fly into the ocean, fly into the earth, or just land upon the earth, and we call these things UFOs, for lack of a better knowledge of what they are. And as you will see in some of the photographs of some of the skulls, we don't know what else to call them. What are these things? What are these things that one could look into and have played back memories that you haven't thought of in 40 or 50 years? Your childhood dreams, dreams that you had at the age of 7 or 8 or 9 or 10. What is it that they can show you? A battle between the Egyptians and the Assyrians? Aztecs fighting Toltecs? Things that you never exceeded, you never even thought of seeing, you can see in the different skulls. You become part of it. You feel as if you're in the ocean moving. You feel as if you're taking off into space and flying from star to star. You feel the water coming across the land, and you see this earth in this skull changing 3 times, being flooded. People fleeing into the sky, people fleeing into the ocean, people fleeing into the earth. This other skull, twice. The Mitchell-Hedges skull, 4 times. The earth changes. Now, are we hallucinating? Again, we must always ask this question. Or, as we close our eyes, are we just seeing what we are creating in our imaginations? If this is true, why then do people in New York, or people in Paris, or people in London, or people in Rio de Janeiro, or people in Hawaii, or people in Kitchener, Canada, all see the same things? Why are all the scryers, all of the mediums, all the channels that you use that word today, channel, which we call scryers or mediums, why do they all see the same thing? Particularly when they have never seen a skull before, particularly when they have never touched a skull. Now, of course, we have the method whereby people will touch the skull and close their eyes and allow their senses to take hold, and they read out what they see, or feel, or smell, or taste, or hear. And we have the other group that never sees a skull, but tunes in on it from 1,000 miles away, or 10,000 miles away for that matter, as most channels do today. Yet they come up with the same information. Are they all reading the same book? There are not that many books about crystal skulls. Are they all talking to the same people? It puzzles me. It should puzzle you. Of the many skulls I have seen and worked with, of course, the Mayan skull and the Mitchell-Hedges skull are perhaps the clearest. And perhaps those skulls are the best that we have photographed. But yet, in the amethyst skulls, some of them as large as these, not only as small as this one, which is 18th century, late 18th century, we see the same things. We see the perversions. The perversions we call those things which man did, which did not apply to the skull. For instance, we see the sacrifices. We see the destruction of life and lands. We see battles. Perhaps, if we knew how, if we could understand the code to going deeper into the skulls, we would be able to see and understand more. It is very possible when one closes their eyes to almost find themselves, when they're working with a skull, drawn in. And it always happens that if you are closing your eyes as well as if you are leaving your eyes open, 3 specific colors come in when you are scrying: green, blue, and red. Yet, as your brain receives green, red, and blue and converts it into other colors, the skulls seem to take the colors that you may feed into them, such as red or green or blue, and convert them into gold, purples, indigos, violets. And often when you're not even putting colors in, you are just scrying, you are just looking, all of a sudden you will see rays coming out of the skull with no possible light source whereby these colors can be coming from. Often we work in black boxes. We have the skull framed in. All light sources are checked. Yet color is sent out as if the skull itself determines what color should be sent out with what thought the scryer has, or the person who is doing psychometry, person, if you will, who is doing quiet meditation by touching. I do not count meditation by those who do not see or touch. Yet a great many of the reports we are getting on crystal skulls and on crystals are coming from these people.
Nick, with all of your years of study and research on the skulls, have you drawn any conclusions?
Oh my God, yes. Whether they're fact or not, I don't know. I believe that all the skulls are one form or another of an intricate computer, and in their own way, they're all intricate computers. We're positive that nearly all skulls that we are going to deal with and that we have dealt with are made of rock quartz crystal. We believe that all skulls that we will see, as well as those we have seen, because everyone we've seen shows UFO activity, or what we call UFO activity. We really don't know what those crafts are that we see in the skull. We believe that each skull has some relationship with an underwater civilization. We believe that it's possible some of the skulls have a relationship not only with an underwater civilization, but with a civilization that may even exist within our Earth. I know, as fantastic as that sounds, I'm going to put myself on a limb and say that it's possible there is a society or living within the Earth. I believe that each skull has a power unto itself, that it records everything it sees and can be tapped to give out certain information. And this may happen for thousands of years. And I believe all skulls have a color code, a light code, a sound code, and that they can be activated to give you different dimensions of time from these colors, light, or sound, or a combination of all of them. I would say that dealing with the last 5 skulls I've worked with, and which we haven't even talked about, including some of the contemporary skulls, light, color, and sound also has a tendency to activate memory banks within the stone and give us pictures of things that are well beyond our, let's say, before prehistory.
The reason I especially like to play this this short video, the information that my dad was giving out. This is over 20 years ago, and here we are today. And it has much more information. There's a full video if anybody's interested over on the table that you can purchase along with another skull track video. I would like to also say that it's an honor and a privilege to be here. My dad's work with the crystal skulls, they're amazing beings, if you will. I'm wanting to make Shannara available to all of us as we come together, as the skulls come together, for healing and for unity, really. And my work that I do personally is, my dad also brought people together. He was very good about bringing people together and connecting people. And it's my intention or my path to connect with people and to, on a smaller scale. My dad was not nervous about standing up in front of people and talking. However, I don't have that luxury. But in doing the healing work and working with individuals. And we need to come together, all of us, and we need to come together with love, unity, and healing for all of us, as well as the earth and the planet. So I know that we're really limited for time, so I'm going to say thank you to all of you, and turn it over to the Master of Ceremonies.
great.